The second half of our forum this evening. All right. Again, my name is Lori Olaf. I am the Assistant Director at the T. Scott Library, and I thank you for joining us on this beautiful evening here in Merrill, Wisconsin. And we truly appreciate you being here. I know how hard it is for me to be in here. I have gardening to do, but I'm here and committed to being civically engaged with the community, knowing what is going on and listening to the candidates when they recall. We have Melinda Osterberg is the moderator, and she's going to go over some of those rules shortly. And then I have Jeremy Ratliff, the editor for the Photo News. He has gone through the questions, and they will talk about that. Yeah.
Thank you. Just to reiterate some of the rules, no filibustering is allowed. We expect the candidates to respect time restrictions. We have some great timekeepers. The yellow card, when they flash that, that indicates that you have 20 seconds left. The red card does mean you're done, and they've done a great job of indicating and telling you early when you are done. No challenges or personal attacks. If these occur, you will lose your time, and I will move on to the next candidate. If a response is vague or too general, the answers will just be accepted as given. And it is perfectly acceptable to say you agree with something another candidate has stated. So you say, I agree, and then you don't necessarily have to answer the question if you don't feel like there's anything that has not been said already, especially with the review there. Okay, we will have 120 seconds, or 90 seconds, I'm sorry, for an opening statement. We will begin with John, and then we'll move down the line. For the first question, we'll begin with you, Dave, and then on to Tim.
Hi, my name is John Manlisho, District 5 Alderman. Served 5 years in the Marine Corps, got out and came back to Merrill. Worked 13 years for the school system doing IT, and I currently work for Lincoln County doing the same thing. I like to volunteer my time as I'm a member of different organizations and involved with a bunch of groups, all the way from coaching one of my 3 kids in whatever sport they happen to be in on that day, or the commander of the American Legion, or on the Northwoods Veterans Post Executive Committee building the fine new building we're building down in the corner of Johnson and 6th. Before I was asked to do this on my last term, I was at a meeting and someone said, hey, I heard you're running for alderman. I looked at him and was like, news to me. And then I was at another meeting that afternoon and somebody said, hey, I heard you're running for alderman. I'm like, well, that's odd. So I just sort of tucked that under my hat and shooed it away. Well, the next day at the meeting I was at, whatever it was that day, someone said, hey, I heard you're running for alderman. So I went in to see Bill Heidemann. He said, oh, yeah, I guess I've been telling people you're running for alderman. So here we are with my already busy schedule of volunteering. I promise that was correct.
Dave Sugo, I'm the alderman of District 6. I'm serving my 12th year as alderman. There's only one person on the council that's been on longer than me, and that's Steve Haas. The reason I became an alderman is I saw Mike Taylor at McDonald's, and he said, hey Dave, Mark Peterson wants to have some time off as alderman. Would you take over? And my wife said, but I thought about it, and here it is, year 12. And so I'm a public school teacher, retired. I retired in 2000, so I have a lot of time to go to doing the job of an alderman. And if you are an alderman, you know it's more than just going to the one meeting a month, because you are on committees. And that's where all the work gets done. That's where all the decisions are made. And I would really love to see some people show up that are really so interested in city government to some of the committee meetings, because that is where the rubber meets the road.
Thank you, Dave. I used to play soccer in college, so I'm going to try to avoid a yellow card at all costs, particularly not a red card. I don't want to take my opening statements are going to be very brief. I was asked to be on the City Common Council when the alderperson from my district moved out of town. I had just recently retired from the nursing home where I'd worked for 29 years, predominantly as the nursing home administrator, so I had a great deal of knowledge about local government, finances, managing budgets, personnel, all those types of issues. So I said, well, why not? So that was 5 years later, 3 terms later, and I'd like to think that I made a difference. My main goal on getting on the Common Council was to move Merrill forward economically. We were kind of stagnant for a while, and so I think we've done a good job about that. I would like to get back on the board and continue to move Merrill forward.
Thank you. If re-elected, what changes, if any, would you like to see happen within the Common Council and/or decisions made by the Council? If you do not have any changes in mind, what is your personal future vision for the city and those who make decisions on behalf of the city and its residents/business community?
Well, that's a great question, because I don't think I'm going to. I think I'll be continuing, since I have 0 persons running against me. So it makes it pretty easy. There were quite a number of people that signed the paper to have me recalled. People that did
Dave, Mike.
the people that did the recalling, collecting the signatures were not even from my district. I think 1 person was. So these are people from other districts in the city. They came around to my district, District 6, and got signatures. And I've talked to some of those people, and some of the things they said is, how do you like your high taxes? Well, who did? Well, then sign this paper. And on the recall paper, there was not one thing mentioned that it had anything to do with taxes. Another thing that I was accused of on that paper was that I was involved in changing the ordinances of the city that changed the job of the street commissioner. They didn't do the research, because Mary Ball was the alderperson those 2 years that those ordinances were changed. And so pretty much what happened is someone, looks like they ran it through a mimeograph machine or a copy machine, and pretty much said the same thing about each and every one of us. And I looked at all the things they said. None of them were true of me. I'm sorry, I don't mean to brag, but they just weren't. That's all I'm going to say about it.
The change, at this present time, I don't think I would make any changes to the Common Council right now. I think it's working pretty well. There's a diversity of opinions, which is always good. It sometimes can make the meetings go a little longer, but it's always nice to hear different viewpoints. Otherwise, life gets kind of boring. The one thing I think we need to do better, and we should continue to do better, is we do a terrible job of communicating with the public about information about why decisions were made. We do a terrible job explaining how those decisions were made, what information was used to make those decisions, and I think that's part of the issue with the recall. I don't think people fully understood what was going on. The budget was approved at a 3% tax levy. You know, this notion that we agreed to a 7.4% tax increase is just ludicrous. We voted on a 3% increase in the tax levy, which is the amount of money the city was going to spend. What happened was the assessed valuation in the city went up, but all of that assessed valuation went up in the TIDS. The assessed valuation of the city of Merrill outside the TIDS went down $10 million last year. So consequently, the taxes, the 3% tax levy had to be spread over $10 million less dollars of assessed valuation. And after we found that out, which was a question at the last meeting, the tax statements had already been printed, the budget had already been approved, had already been sent to the state. There was nothing that could be done at that time to change it. So anyway, that's what I would change. We don't do a very good job of communicating why some of those decisions were made.
Much like Tim said, I think we have a great group on the Common Council. It's diverse, we have different opinions, which does make for longer meetings. If there was one thing that I could change about our Common Council, it's not so much the council per se, but it's community involvement. Some of these meetings we sit down and it's the same 5 or 6 people, maybe 5 or 6 people. Besides the meetings where the public was at the meeting and with their pitchforks and nooses, the change I want to see is more community involvement. Just because we're your elected representative doesn't mean you have to rely solely on us for your information or be involved with the meetings. Every single meeting we have has a public comment period, and it's rarely, if ever, used. Much like Dave said too, all the work gets done, not at the city council or the city council meeting, but in the department meetings. That's where everything happens. So if I had to change, I'd like to see more community involvement from people.
Thank you. Aldermanic. What do you believe is the appropriate responsibility of alders when it comes to city financial matters? How does this role differ from the role of staff? Who do you believe is ultimately responsible for the city's fiscal well-being?
Well, ultimately, the mayor and the common council are responsible for the city's fiscal shape. The council's role in the budget is to review it and approve it. The staff's role is to prepare the budget down to the minor details. I think our last budget was about 137 pages long. And that's the job of the staff, to put together a 137-page budget for us. And then our job is to review it, look for areas where we want to change, ask questions for where it looks like things are out of whack. But ultimately, it is the common council and the mayor to determine that. And staff should prepare it.
I believe so.
Much like Tim said, the mayor and the council are ultimately responsible as your elected representatives to be responsible for the city's financial outcome. And like Mr. Meehan also stated, it's the job of the department heads and all the people in the departments to come up with their little slice of the pie that they want to have. And it's our job to manage those slices of pie and organize them and decide what we can or cannot do with the resources that are allocated to the city's budget. I guess the finance director would be the one that is responsible for giving us the information that we need to make those decisions on what we can or cannot do.
Repeat the question.
What do you believe is the appropriate responsibility of alders when it comes to city financial matters? How does this role differ from the role of staff? Who do you believe is ultimately responsible for the city's fiscal well-being?
Well, the buck stops here. All the persons are. We depend on the city administrator and the finance director to give us the right information. There are department meetings and needs that the departments need come. And as you heard Alderman Norton say that he attends those meetings, he's been attending those, so we need to get the input from them. We make the final decisions. And what happens is we get the material, the requests, and we talk about them and we discuss them. We sometimes question the departments to say why they need this piece of equipment, but ultimately the buck stops with us. We are, the city administrator works for the council, and so we are in. I don't know if I answered all the questions or not.
Yes, I think so. John, I believe it goes back to you. Okay. What do you feel are your greatest assets to the council? And what have you found most challenging about your service as an alder?
As I said in my opening statement, for pretty much my adult career, I've been a public servant. So I've been on the other end of this. I've been the one asking for money and coming up with the budgets and helping plan things to have them crushed. No, but so I have an extensive background in working through the material that the departments start with, sending it up the chain to your school board or your county board or the Marine Corps. I don't know who we asked, but somebody we asked. So I've just got the experience of being on the other end of the sword, and all the time and the effort that gets put into these budgets and getting everything right to see what you can get done. And I've unfortunately been told no before too, because there just isn't enough money. So I've got a good outlook on where the department heads and the city administrator and the finance director are coming from when they put all this work together to give to us to try to disseminate it, decide what's fair and what needs to be done, and hopefully we don't have to put too much off, because then we run into situations like right now.
You want to repeat that question? My memory's a little good, except it's short.
What do you feel are your greatest assets to the council? And what have you found most challenging about your service as an alder?
Thank you for that. My greatest asset, I'm a good listener. I was a public school teacher for 34 years, so I'm accustomed to listening. And I do expect that my constituents are going to call me and let me know. I'm not a mind reader. I said it at the last council meeting. If you have a problem, you need to call me. I have had several different people call me, and I pride myself in responding and answering their questions. So, and what was the second part?
What have you found most challenging about your service as an alder?
Okay, the most challenging part is that as an alderman, I feel like the Maytag repairman. I'm the loneliest man in town because I rarely hear from my constituents. The most thing I hear is say my neighbor's leaves aren't great, or there's junk in their backyard. And so I would really appreciate if the people in my district would be in communication with me. The other thing is that, as I said earlier, most of the important decisions are made at the committee level. And chairman of the Health and Safety Committee, I have very few people on it. John is also on Health and Safety. We also have other committees that are rarely and sparsely attended, which is a sad thing. Because if you listen to what happens at the council, it's mostly they read what the item is and they vote. So most of the time you don't even know if that's all you would listen to. Don't really know what's going on. So but the other part of it, I guess, to listen to the programs, the recordings, and find out that way. So.
I guess my greatest asset would be, my experience in my employment when I was employed. I spent 29 years working at a nursing home which was owned by Lincoln County, so I have extensive knowledge in budgeting, in finance. I did all of the financial statements for the nursing home. I prepared the budget for the nursing home. I prepared all the documents for the audit that we have an annual audit every year. So my greatest asset is that, as well as, like John, I was on the other side. I was the staff to the county board. I was the person asking for the money. I was the one, presenting the information to them. So I have a unique perspective because I came from the other side. And so I know what both sides feel like. If I had the greatest challenge, I think, as I've said this before, is disseminating information to the constituents so they understand why we made this decision. Sometimes the information is not easily digestible in a 1 or 2 sentence answer, and that's my problem, particularly when it comes to tax levies and tax rates and TIPS and all the other acronyms that relate to those types of things. It's difficult when people want a simple answer to that, because there is no simple answer. It's very complicated, it's very complex. And that very complexity is what led to the issue with the budget this year. There are a lot of moving pieces, and a lot of that information is not available to the city, or was not available to the city until late in the budget process. And that was really the main reason that the issue with the budget came up. So that is a challenge. I think it will continue to be a challenge. We found a way, hopefully, to keep that from happening in the future.
Thank you, Alderman Meehan. First question is going to be directed toward Alderman Suko. Bear with me, this is a lengthy question, it's 3 parts. If you need me to repeat it, that's more than fine. What's that?
Give me one part at a time.
I'll do it backwards, actually. First part is, when did you, or how did you find out the tax rate percentage was different than expected? Was there a meeting to inform the council of a percentage mistake before tax statements went out? And if not, who should have called the meeting?
First part of the question, when we left that meeting, when we passed the budget, we all, even those that voted against it, thought it was going to be a 3% increase. When did we find out? When did I find out that it was different? After, because I talked to Alderman Steve Haas about it, he said, David, we can't do anything about it. It's already gone to the county, they printed it, and we're stuck with what it is. What was the other part of the question?
The last part of the question was,
Who should have called the meeting, if there was one?
was there a meeting to inform the council of the percentage mistake before statements went out? You partially answered. And if there wasn't, who should have called the meeting?
There wasn't, and probably it should have been either the city administrator or the mayor. I would say those are the ones that should have called it, because they work for us. We expect that the city administrator is going to have his thumb on what goes on, and that's either him or Mayor Wellner should have called it. There was no meeting called.
Thank you.
I think I actually partially answered a good part of that question. When we passed the budget, again, we passed a 3% tax levy, which all things being equal would have translated into a 3% tax rate increase. The tax levy and the rates are different. The tax levy is divided into the assessed valuation, which comes up with the tax rate. So when the assessed valuation went down $10 million, the tax rate went up. And we found out about that. I got a call from Dave Johnson as the tax bills were going up. But that budget had already been approved. And that budget had already been sent to the state, and that budget, the tax bills had already been printed. It couldn't have been changed. Even with a meeting, the budget could not have been changed. It was not legally possible to change the budget at that time. Should a meeting have been called? Maybe, but I'm pretty sure the administrator called everybody, called all the common council members, and gave them the bad news. So I'm not sure what a meeting would have accomplished other than to say, the tax rate went up more than we thought, which we already do. The council could not take any action at that point in time. Plus, we were having a common council meeting, I think it was a week and a half later. But again, the purpose of having a meeting, you call a meeting to say our taxes went up higher than they should have. I'm not sure that's a prudent use of time and money.
Much like Alderman Suko and Alderman Meehan have already mentioned, Administrator Johnson called me to inform me that or give us the heads up that the budget was different than we had expected. The fact that the budget was already approved by the state, there was nothing we could have done at that time to hold a meeting. And if we could have done anything, I'm sure we would have. And the person that would have been in charge of calling that meeting would either have been the city administrator or the mayor to get us all together and see if we could have resolved the issue, which at that time was impossible or illegal. Either one. There was nothing we could have done about that. So.
Thank you. Alderman Meehan has a separate follow-up question on that same topic. What convinced you to vote for the tax increase?
Well, the question, I can't vote for a tax increase that I didn't know about. When we voted on the budget, the tax levy was 3%. The 7.4% came after that budget was voted on. And that 7.4% increase was directly related to the fact that the assessed valuation of the city went down $10 million. So I didn't vote for a 7.4% increase. I voted for a 3% increase. And that turned into a 7.4 increase because of the decreased assessment. So there is a single alderman on the common council who voted for that 7.4%. And the reality is that's the increase in the tax rate. And the assessment went down, consequently the rate goes up, but doesn't necessarily mean you're going to pay 7.4 more percent in taxes. So the average increase between average taxpayer paid was somewhere between 3 and 4%, which was pretty much in the ballpark where we were thinking. We had anticipated 3%. It went somewhere north of 3. Most of them are right around 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, 3.9.
Go to John next. Go to John next.
Like all the current aldermen have said earlier, we didn't vote for the 7.4% tax. It was the 3%, and with inflation and things that are going on, that's where it was, and that was things that the city is currently doing right now are progressive and positive, as you can see anywhere you look around town. And like Alderman Norton said earlier, I was voting for that progression, not to raise people's taxes to what they eventually were, and to accomplish the things that we're accomplishing. It's got to be paid for. And I believe we live in a beautiful community that's making the right moves to move forward to a community that we can all live in and enjoy.
Want to repeat that question for me?
Absolutely. When and how did you find out the tax rate percentage was different than expected?
That's not the right one.
Oh, sorry.
I thought I answered that.
Yeah, you did. What convinced you to vote for the tax increase?
Well, we met several different evenings working at the budget, and we took items, and I look at it, I'm representing District 6, but, I have to consider the whole city of Maryland. I'm responsible for that, not just the 6th district. And so I looked at things and things were cut, were postponed, or put on to 2020. But the ones that we did pass, I felt were smart. Some of the things that were done were, some of the people that were opposed to and wrote things in the newspaper, for example, light sets at Odds Park. I just heard at the Health and Safety, at the Park and Rec Commission meeting last night, that there's something been going on. It's been used 11 times within this last week. And they made an accusation that it wasn't used only a few times a year. So we looked at things that, aren't just a 1 or 2 year, but are a 50 year. And if you wait, what about the cost? I think all of you know that the costs never go down. They just keep going up. And we did get some grants on that. So that's what I look at. What is the best for the city? What it seems like it's smart to do. We have a project coming up now with the systems at the library. And one of the parts came out on one of the units on the roof. And should we just replace one? Or should we wait and maybe another one breaks down? I guess they're about 20 years old. And we decided at the recent meeting that we were going to replace all 3. So it's things like that as we look at items, I look at what do I think is the best for the city and what items are necessary, more necessary maybe than another one. And we don't always all agree on that.
Thank you. Next question is for Alderman Van Lieshout. Can you explain TIF and TIF? And if they help Merrill, please give examples.
Yeah, that is easy, Dave. All you need to do is look around the community and look at all the projects that are either directly